This is a transformative moment. This is a moment to build a clean energy future for our country.
This bill will reduce the release of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere, reduce global warming, and concurrently will spur the creation of millions of clean energy jobs.
Cap and trade is actually cap and tax.
Unless carbon pollution is addressed, we face an uncertain future.
It will cap American opportunity. It will trade away American jobs. It's time to reject the new national energy tax.
Biggest tax in American history.
This could be the most colossal mistake ever made in the history of the United States Congress.
Although politicians always have and always will continue to debate policy, the scientists have come to a conclusion. Anthropogenic climate change is real. Storms are getting stronger, the ice caps are melting, and the sea level is rising. With global carbon levels continuing to increase at an unprecedented rate, now more than ever, decisive action needs to be taken in order to prevent significant economic, environmental, and human losses. Currently, policies are being enacted to help the nation work towards a better emissions standard, but progress has been slow and people are resistant to change. One market-based approach to regulating emissions comes in the form of cap and trade. Unlike standard regulations or command and control policies, market-based approaches like cap and trade utilize economic instruments such as market and price in order to incentivize companies to reduce pollution. In 2009, the House of Representatives narrowly passed the Waxman-Markey bill. The legislation, which called for the establishment of a nationwide CO2 cap and trade program, never reached the Senate's floor. The Energy Information Administration projected that the bill could have significantly reduced the amount of CO2 emitted nationally, which would have drastically altered the future of America. Cap and trade is a supply-side policy. By establishing a limit or a cap on the quantity of fossil fuel emissions, the policy reduces the quantity of pollution while subsequently raising the price. The quantity falls from Q to Q1, while the price rises from P to P1. In essence, the cap and trade policy is a tax with a fixed quantity. Capping carbon emissions creates two types of costs: resource costs and allowance costs. The resource cost produced by the cap and trade policy is the cost created by reducing pollution, and the allowance value is the cost of the permits themselves. This cost is often transferred to the consumer in the form of higher prices. When arguing for the Waxman-Markey bill, many state representatives overlooked this transferable cost. Democratic Majority Leader Steny Hoyer famously once said,
But if we take action now, we can get jobs, growth, clean energy, and energy independence for less than the price of a postage stamp a day.
However, when you include this transferable cost in the calculation, Steny's argument kind of falls flat. Unfortunately, this allowance value is transferred to the public in the form of higher consumer prices. Because a significant portion of the cost is transferable, one party involved in the policy stands to benefit. This can be the polluters, the politicians, or the people. If a cap is set and the pollution permits are given away, then the fossil fuel companies end up with the windfall profits. The cost of the cap and trade policy is transferred to the consumers in the form of higher prices, and the increased profit is taken home by the polluting companies. This profit is then distributed amongst the company's shareholders. Because capital stocks are disproportionately owned by the wealthy, the cap and giveaway policy is essentially a regressive tax. Furthermore, if the cap and giveaway policy allows for permit trading, it invites further financial speculation. This can cause price instability and the potential for monetarily incentivized fraudulent behavior. If a cap is set and the pollution permits are bought at auction, then the government ends up with revenue. The cost of the cap and trade policy is transferred to the consumers in the form of higher prices, and the increased profit is used by the fossil fuel companies to purchase permits from the government. The government can use this revenue, which is a protective rent, to fund public projects such as improvements to infrastructure, healthcare, or to the military. Unfortunately, because politicians aren't perfect, this protective rent might end up being used to subsidize additional carbon-based emissions, only adding to the problem. If a cap is set and the pollution permits are bought at auction, then the government ends up with revenue. The cost of the cap and trade policy is transferred to the consumers in the form of higher prices, and the increased profit is used by the fossil fuel companies to purchase permits. The government can then redistribute the permit revenues to the public in the form of a dividend. The dividend covers the transferred cost and is progressive. Cap and dividend policies embody the idea that everyone has equal rights to the atmosphere. Because of this, everyone receives an equal dividend. Since higher income households consume more, they have larger carbon footprints and end up paying more due to the higher prices. This essentially turns the cap and dividend policy into a progressive tax, while providing a form of income to the economically disadvantaged. In summary, a cap and trade policy has several pros and cons. Some of the shortfalls of cap and trade are the fact that it can be hard to hit the abatement target. It can be hard to monitor pollution and enforce the caps that are set. It creates pollution hotspots where one area is significantly more polluted than another. It can be used to subsidize oil, and it can create market imperfections and speculation. Some of the benefits include the fact that it achieves short-run cost minimization. It provides long-term incentives, it creates protective rents, it is progressive, and it incentivizes smaller carbon footprints.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag, ooh, they're red, white, and blue. And when the band plays Hail to the Chief, ooh, they point the cannon at you, Lord. It ain't me, I ain't no senator, son.
Thank you for watching.